Hey YouTube, 40 Watt Garage, welcome to the channel or welcome back. I'm continuing on my series of installing the Whitby motor car's soft top on my Factory 5 Mark IV Roadster. We're getting along in the process and here's the next couple of steps. Stay tuned. The point at where I'm at on the installation is installing the remaining lift the dots that go around the side of the top and meet up with the very first ones that we installed. There are going to be 4 more per side. In a previous segment, I had mentioned that I wanted to measure inside the trunk and find out where there might be an obstruction that I couldn't get to the back side of the lift-a-dot stud. And this tape line, the width of it, lays out my go, no-go zone. Because if it's on this side of the tape, I can get at it from the trunk. This side of the tape, I could reach in through the wheel well. And what's right here is the side panels for the trunk and the side panel for your inner, that forms the inner wheelhouse. And you can't drill down on top of it. There's bulb seal. You don't want to breach the separation between the 2 compartments. You just can't get to it. And approximately about here, which is outside the zone of the top, but back here is a 3/4 inch brace that goes across to form the support for the rear of the body in front of the trunk lid. So, and I did this on both sides, my go, no-go zone. Basically what I did is I took a scale from a fixed point in the trunk, which is right about here, and it's the hinge, and measured from the hinge to where the scale or the ruler butted up against the panel. And this is approximate, but it just tells me to stay away from this area. Measure twice, cut once, check and double check. Can't stress that enough. What I've done here is I measured the distance between the stud and my top line, where the top lays down to, in a couple of places along these areas. And on my car, it came out to be roughly 1 9/16. So then what I did is several places, every few inches, I measured up 1 9/16 all the way around, and then played connect the dots, kind of following the same arc all the way around. So this inner line established where my lift the dot studs would wind up. Then after measuring about 17 times and double checking, I've narrowed down that no-go zone where you just cannot get to it. And this is where that bulkhead is. And then there's a 3/4 inch steel tube right here. So you're stuck. You can't put anything in this area. From there, I took a piece of cardboard, cut it to 7 inches, and laid it down from stud to stud, made a pencil mark, transferred it out to the outer line, made a mark, and then just went around and around and established that 7-inch spacing. I did this for both sides. Unfortunately, what it comes down to is you really just can't get a lift the dot stud down in this valley, because it runs right into the top of that 3/4 inch brace that's inside the car that makes up part of the rear structure of the car. You've got to go a little to the outside of it, and you're going to be accessing this stud, and this stud from probably inside the wheelhouse. These are available inside the trunk. Again, this is where you have to adapt the recommendations to your particular car. You have to adapt it to your particular top. And I've had this laid out, stared at it for 15 or better minutes, and visually it looks good. Functionally, with the exception of right here, I'd really want one there, but can't have it. It's just how it's going to wind up. For those of you running dual roll bars, this is where cosmetics really plays an important part. But it's to your advantage with the dual roll bars because you have fixed points to refer to. You've got the one of the first studs you installed here, and then you've got your roll bar bezel in here. I don't have to match anything side to side. Whereas if you, with a dual roll bar setup, you're really going to need to take some time and some measurements from this stud to this roll bar and the other side of the roll bar to get your visual spacing right. Because even if you have to fudge it from what the ruler says, with the top off and you step back, that stud, the one just outside the valley there, and that one there, it's got to look right. If they're not lined up in respect to distance from the roll bar bezel, it's not going to look good. So, the dual roll bar people are probably going to have to take a little artistic license with the ruler, and you're after cosmetics more than being dead on the money with the ruler. This is a perfect example of measure twice, cut once, step back, look at it, and then break out the tools. I've hit the stage of where now it's time to drill some holes. I've stared at it for a while. I've had somebody else come and take a look, and it's time to just go ahead and do it. So we're just going to do the same procedure as we did with the other holes. We're going to start a little small pilot divot and then break out the power tools. So like I did before, I am going to put and double check that I am on my snap line, not the edge of the top line. Snap line. Put my bit down, give it a few twirls by hand, create a divot. Now this is where you're going to need to be careful, because you don't want to drill perpendicular to the floor. You want to try to match the contour of the body in both planes, because you want the stud to screw down and sit flat. So approximate that angle as best as you can. Well, I guess after the first 7, 4 more aren't that hard to do. Again, I'm going to take the countersink and just hand twirl these holes a little bit to break that sharp edge. And the same thing with the tap. Try to approximate the 2 angles, because if you're tapping into the fiberglass, you can kind of carve your own direction regardless of how the hole was drilled. It's soft. I have the studs all installed, at least from the top side. As it worked out, this one and this one will be accessible from the trunk. These 3 on each side, I'm going to have to go through the wheel well, and I'm going to probably have to jack up the back of the car to be able to let the wheels droop enough to where I can get my arm in there to back these up with the nut and washer. So be prepared. All in a day's fun. That's the rearmost of the 3 that you need to access through the wheel well. That is right near that go, no-go zone where you can see the panel that forms the inside of the wheelhouse, or the panel that's the inside of your trunk. The next one is midway, about even with that's the roll bar down tube coming through right there. And then the forwardmost one, which is 6 inches past the door opening, roughly 7 inches past the door opening, that one's the 3rd. So I'm going to put some backing washers on, some nuts, and we'll go do the other side. I did have to jack up the car, not off the ground, but almost to suspension droop to be able to get my arm in here to be able to spin these nuts on. So Just an idea of what you got to look forward to. Okay, here we can see the 3 screws inside the wheel wells. And I've got some 7/8 inch backing washers on here. I want to spread the load out over a wider area. Now on to the passenger side. Now that all the studs are installed, it is time to mark the top and then take it off and punch the holes and install the fasteners. So I'm gonna pull the fabric out to my pencil line, lay it flat, find the stud, make a mark, and then I'm gonna measure them just to make sure that they fall on the right spacing and the right distance. Pull it out to the pencil line. Now I just saw something a little unusual here. Sorry about the camera, but this flange at the top narrows down as it goes forward. I did not allow for that in my measurement for the stud line. So this first snap, if I bring the fabric out to my pencil line, that stud is going to wind up really tight inside. So I'm just going to make a little executive decision here and fudge that snap to where it's going to fall in the center of this narrower space. Then I will bring the fabric back out to the pencil line and do this one. Now for the second snap, I'll bring the fabric out to the pencil line. And these subsequent ones. Stretch the fabric around and push down with some effort. It's relatively easy to find that stud. And my magic number from the fabric pencil line to the stud was about 1 9/16. The only one that I am off a little bit on is this one. I'm going to bring that one out. Make a different mark. And we'll move over to the other side. So again, on this side, where this sewn flange narrows down a little bit, if I punch the stud where it is prescribed, it's not going to work right. So I'm going to just fudge it towards the middle a little more. These all can go fudge a little bit more towards the outside edge. I'm just going to put a little flag on them. I'll know what it means. Okay. Time to pull the top off again and punch more holes. All of the snaps are now installed. It is back on the car. I really wish you could put a snap right there, but that's where that bulkhead is inside. That's just the downside. It's a little wrinkled because I don't have it stretched, pulled, and taped to the windshield. I didn't want to go through that again. But this is the first time back on the car with all snaps in place.